We begin our coverage this hour in western Ukraine, where the refugee crisis is growing. UN officials say there are currently 660,000 Ukrainian refugees in neighboring countries, and that number is rising by the hour. NBC News Now anchor Tom Yamas joins us now from the western Ukrainian city of Lviv. Tom, good morning.
Hey, Joe, good morning to you. You know, we've been telling you so much about the civilian effort to take on the Russians when it comes to the battlefield. Well, there's also a civilian effort to help out each other. Just behind me here, this is one of the major depots where people are coming to volunteer and hand out supplies. Those bags are filled with water, with food, with winter clothes. They're going to the regions that are war-torn all across this country because so many people are struggling right now. They need supplies immediately. So people are working here 24 hours a day, right around the clock. They're not stopping to help their fellow countrymen.
Here in western Ukraine, where a humanitarian crisis is unfolding, the city of Lviv increasingly on edge. Volunteers manning checkpoints to keep out Russian saboteurs.
We're looking for enemy documents, maps, GPS.
And you feel you have to do this, right? You have to protect your town?
Yeah, absolutely. My child here, my wife here, and I must be here and protect my family and my city.
These checkpoints have been running 24 hours a day since the war started. For many of the smaller towns, these are the frontline defense. They have things like these tire spikes to stop cars. And for bigger vehicles, like, say, a Russian tank, they have what they call hedgehogs. They hope these can at least slow down those larger military vehicles.
And if Russian forces arrive, ordinary citizens ready to fight back. Men like Igor have been working around the clock, making thousands of Molotov cocktails.
All Ukrainians, from kids of 6 years old to the old persons from 60, 70 years old, are in the condition of war.
Meanwhile, the mass exodus continues. Border crossings and train stations packed with mothers and young children. Families trying to get to safety while coping with the heartbreak of separation. This man putting his pregnant wife on the train for Poland, while Yevgenia, traveling with her young daughter, is leaving behind her husband.
So hard and so scary about my husband. I don't want to say goodbye.
Do you think the Russians are going to come here?
Yes.
Despite the odds, many in Lviv say they refuse to give up hope, bringing food and clothing for those who've lost their homes and come here to seek shelter and safety.
We are sending a message that we are not alone and we can help each other and we are together.
And if you notice something just behind me, the Ukrainians who are helping out here, they're of all ages here. You have mothers, you have children, you have teenagers, everyone coming together. We actually just spoke to a college student who was studying at the university in Kyiv. He obviously can't go to school anymore, but he can fight. And he said he wanted to come here to help before the Russians get here. Of course, they're still in the eastern part of the country. We're in western Ukraine right now, but everyone here trying to do their part to help their country. Guys,
so many
back to you.
Examples of community, of resilience, and of bravery. Tom, thanks so much for that report.
Now, over in the capital, Kyiv, Ukrainians are nervously eyeing a massive Russian military convoy advancing toward the city. That's as Russia intensifies its bombing campaign over in Kharkiv. NBC News chief foreign correspondent Richard Engel has more from the capital.
Kyiv this morning is staring down the barrel of a Russian assault column that's reportedly up to 40 miles long. Satellite images confirm it's big, deadly, and dangerous, with hundreds of armored vehicles, tanks, and towed artillery, and that it's heading toward the capital of 3 million people. Russia seems to be changing tactics. So far, Russia has been using small group attacks with incursions into towns and cities, which the Ukrainian military has been able to repel with brave and determined resistance. What's coming looks more like old, blunt Russian siege warfare. It's already happening outside of Kiev, with Russian forces attacking Mariupol in the south, home to 500,000 people, with tragic consequences and disturbing images emerging. A 6-year-old girl next to her parents at a supermarket was hit by a shell. She was rushed to an ambulance, alive but just clinging. At the hospital, her injuries proved too much. Show this to Putin, a doctor told a camera from the Associated Press. The eyes of this child and crying doctors. In Kharkiv, Ukraine's second city, more siege and assault Russia pounding the city center and its administrative building in ways that appear indiscriminate, including Ukrainian officials and a human rights group allege with banned cluster munitions. Russia denies the accusation. President Volodymyr Zelensky overnight saying the Russians targeted residential sections of the city, calling it a military crime. But Ukrainians are not being cowed. Russian troops did capture the small port city of Berdyansk, but residents came out and shouted down the armed Russians. Berdyansk is Ukraine, they yelled. The Russian troops seemed surprised and held their fire. In Kiev, those staying behind are readying themselves for street fighting, with sandbag checkpoints manned by armed volunteers and with seemingly endless supplies of Molotov cocktails.
They have no chance to get into our city and into our country. So that's why they should leave, or they will be all dead. That's the simple reason. Us or them.
As Ukraine braces for a new, possibly even more brutal chapter of this unprovoked war.
The UN says it has documented 136 Ukrainians killed so far, including at least 12 children. But the real death toll is feared to be much higher.
All right, Richard Engel, thank you so much.
A grim situation is developing in a Ukrainian town that's putting hundreds of children in danger.
Yeah, 2 orphanages in the town of Mykolaiv in southern Ukraine could be cut off from government funding as Russian forces close in around the area. The lack of resources could lead to a dire food shortage. Mark Davis is the founding director of Abundance International, which runs the 2 orphanages, and he joins us now from Ukraine. Mark, good morning. First, thank you so much for being with us in these tough times. And just first, tell us, how are the children in these 2 orphanages doing right now?
Thank you for asking, letting us share the story, because the story of the orphans has been missing over the last months leading up into this story. And right now there's a lot of fear, confusion. Imagine the trauma for the orphanages we work with. Are 0 to 4 years old, and a third of them are special needs, disabled, Down syndrome kids, which cannot understand what the noises are, but more the trauma of them being ushered down to a bomb shelter to have to sit every time the sirens go off. And the doctors who help run the facilities are assuring that we'll give them psychological care afterwards, but it's not right. These kids don't deserve that. And immediately when we saw this happening, I put together with Adam Lyons, who does business planning, a way to try to expand the help here and across to other orphanages. So what we're doing at abundanceinternational.org is taking donations from people who love and care and want to see these kids cared for. We are finding resources because this orphanage here, we were down to 1 week of food supplies left. And we scrambled, and God bless the people here. They were so helpful. The grocery stores were helpful. They let us go to the front of the lines. We're finding it, and now we're getting requests all across the country, and we're trying to give aid because these places can't leave. People keep asking us, can't you get the kids out of the country? I go, how do you take kids with disabilities who are on critical medical attention in bus rides in war zones? We have to be able to survive until the roads are clear, until it's safe to do something else. Here you see in the video, this is the bomb shelter, an entire orphanage brought down here. These kids don't understand it. And in the audio, you'd hear the crying. And God bless the nurses and the nannies for just trying to be that calm, loving voice down here. And I want to thank everybody. The outpouring of love, the giving that's been happening at abundanceinternational.org has been tremendous. And it's making a difference. And we are able to get the money right now to the orphanages. I can use my debit card to buy things. And until the banking system gets shut off, we have a window of time to get as much aid as we can to these kids who really can't leave. They're here stuck in a war zone, and we need to care for them.
God bless everyone who's helping right now. Mark, is there Ukrainian support nearby? And do you have any indication that Russian forces are anywhere near where you are?
Of course. And again, I'm not going to get into the military thing. I'm just going to tell you what I see. For the last 4 days in a row, we've had sirens, we've had explosions, we've had active conflict, we've had death, we've had military people. The Russians have not taken the city. I have not personally seen any of them. I have not personally seen any tanks, but there are plenty of videos of people who have been watching the battles and trying to keep them back as more of the fighting has happened in the neighboring city of Kherson, where we also have an orphanage, and that entire orphanage is having to live in the basement of a church.
Oh, it's just haunting to hear you say, if you could hear the audio on this video, we would hear these children crying. Mark, tell us sort of what your plan is, because I think it might also sort of illuminate kind of what a lot of people who are stuck are thinking. You are caring for these children who cannot leave, as you point out, due to the medical care that they need in this facility. They can't be in a bus for days, stopping on dangerous highways. But what ultimately are the people of Ukraine thinking right now? Is it to be in these bomb shelters and to, as you use the word, survive currently through this attack, and then it would be to leave? What are you thinking? What is your plan for these children?
Honestly, the best thing, even for those who've evacuated and are in Poland, a lot of the Ukrainians go, I just want the dust to settle to come back home. People love Ukraine. They love their cities. They're very patriotic. There's no reason for these kids to have to go anywhere else. Now, I do have another breaking story where one of the children has been approved for adoption, and the mother was 2 months away from coming and picking it up, and she's paranoid and freaked out. How is my child doing? And they're separated from this child they're about to adopt. So there are many things that will happen, but right now we've got to get past this immediate crisis, the immediate war, and see what's on the other side. But the honest answer is, if we can keep supporting these, they're given amazing, wonderful medical care, loving environments, and a good start at life right here. And then the hopes of, because of people like you helping to get the word out, we will have, when the dust settles, more people wanting to adopt these beautiful babies and give them good homes.
Mark, real quickly, we want to let people know one more time, what is the best way for them to help you and the children out right now?
Right now, the giving is absolutely helpful. AbundanceInternational.org. We can use the funds here, and we can get them to orphanage directors. We can help. We're building a network across the country of people who can also deliver goods to them. So I'm pleased with the effort. It's overwhelming, but it's very rewarding. And your gifts, please, they make a difference. AbundanceInternational.org. Thank you so much. We will keep up to date with you the status of these and what's happening with all of these gifts. Thank you so much. Your love is felt. Trust me, it's felt.
Please do keep us updated. We're thinking of you, Mark. We're thinking of the kids. We're thinking of everyone helping those kids right now. Thank you.
God bless you and what you're doing.
Thank you.
Thank you. Now, countries around the world are tightening the vice around Russia and its economy, increasing pressure on Vladimir Putin to end the invasion. NBC News senior international correspondent Keir Simmons joins us now from Moscow. Hey, Keir, good morning.
Hey, Savannah, good morning to you. And we're less than a mile away from the Kremlin, but we may as well be a million miles away from that place where President Putin is isolated and holed up. This is Europe Square. We wanted to bring you here to show you. Behind me there is the Europe Mall. You can see the big name brands being advertised on the front of that mall. But like dominoes, companies have been cutting their ties to this part of the world. People have been telling us they don't want to be disconnected from the West. And you see those flagpoles there? Those are the flags of Europe still flying. President Putin under increasing pressure on multiple fronts, militarily, with his forces facing unexpectedly stiff resistance in Ukraine. Politically, with protests across Russia and thousands of arrests. And economically, the Russian ruble falling to a record low. The Russian stock market suspended all week with fears it could crash. The Russian leader growing increasingly frustrated and, according to US officials, is lashing out and isolated, meeting with his bankers and finance ministers at a distance. Even his military chiefs are not allowed too close.
When dictators hold on for too long, they overreach. They get disconnected from reality. They don't listen to their advisors. That's exactly what's going on here.
Senator Marco Rubio, who sits on the Intelligence Committee, tweeting, "It's pretty obvious to many that something is off with Putin. He's always been a killer, but his problem now is different and significant." And there are early signs of panic among his people, with lines at banks. Outside a mall, a line of cabs, drivers telling me business collapsed a week ago. Inside, we find another line at an ATM, many hoping to withdraw dollars or euros. We meet musicians, Marina, who lived in Boston for 6 years, and Natalie.
So everyone's scared now. My husband was trying to buy foreign currency yesterday. He didn't get a chance to do that.
Couldn't get any?
No.
Caught between Russian government crackdowns and sanctions.
They're already shutting down the Facebook. Everybody's talking about Instagram being shut down, and
they fear a new iron curtain between Russia and the West.
I don't know how can I get my visa.
And this morning, indications of concern among the oligarchs who surround President Putin. billionaires known for yachts, private jets and mansions. A spokesperson for Roman Abramovich, estimated by Forbes to be worth $13 billion, and who owns Britain's Chelsea Football Club, saying he's now involved in peace negotiations. And we should note that the Russians still have the potential to make hundreds of millions of dollars a day from oil and gas. As we know, Europe very concerned not to have that oil and gas cut off. But people here have been telling us that they are no longer able to use things like Apple Pay and Google Pay. Now, I know that sounds like a small thing compared with hundreds of millions of dollars in revenue for Russia, but it does put pressure on ordinary people's lives. The question is President Putin even listening, Savannah?
Absolutely. It's that combination of those ordinary people and those oligarchs. Keir, thank you so much.
Let's bring in Lieutenant General Ben Hodges. He's the former commanding general of the U.S. Army Europe and is now the Pershing Chair in Strategic Studies at the Center for European Policy Analysis. Thank you so much for joining us. I want to start with your reaction to what we heard from Keir, what we're hearing from our colleagues at NBC News. U.S. officials say that Putin is lashing out, could escalate violence in Ukraine, fears he's going to double down. How concerned are you about what we're going to see in the next few days?
Well, I have to say, I've been impressed with Keir. I've been listening to him for quite a few days now, and the reporting he does from Moscow is really very helpful, frankly. I think Ambassador McFaul was on target when he said that, you know, this is when you have an autocrat who becomes detached over time. I suspect there is a bubble around him and that he's not the kind of guy that seems open to pushback or counter opinions to what he wants to do. This makes it dangerous. So I think that we've got to continue doing exactly what we are doing. I think that the Biden administration has done a very good job here, bringing along our allies, working with our allies. We need to increase as much as possible support to Ukraine. But also, I think we could do better at the information effort inside Russia. I don't think many Russians actually truly understand what's going on, why their soldiers are in Ukraine. So maybe some more effort there to help them understand what's happening and create more pressure inside Russia.
Let's shift now to this international response. And we're lucky to have you with us as an expert on European policy. We're seeing these major shifts from countries like Germany, like Sweden, like Switzerland, either committing to send weapons or, you know, not having that neutrality stance anymore. Help our viewers understand why that's such a big deal. What does that mean for the international community going forward, especially if people are thinking, why aren't we doing more to help Ukraine? Explain these big moves and if you think that it is having any impact on Russia and them potentially ending this invasion.
Well, first of all, the fact that so many nations of the world are in agreement on this changes the narrative completely away from what the Kremlin would like to have, their fairy tale that somehow it's the fault of the West, that they've been encircled, that we are the aggressor. The fact that almost every nation in the world agrees with what the West is doing now is very, very powerful. And that's what has enabled nations like Germany, the key in Europe, to change policy, both in terms of not only their own defense spending, but the willingness to join the sanctions. And when Germany joins, that means most of the European Union comes along, and which is the critical part, I think, for these sanctions to work. And it also reinforces the notion that there are things that are more important than the price of gas. And for sure, it's going to be painful for all of us on price of gas and other side effects of these sanctions. But the idea that sovereignty of nations, that the desire for people to want to be free, that in this day and age, 2 or 3 big countries don't get to decide the foreign policy of all the smaller countries. This is why this is important.
Voters in the state of Texas are heading to the polls today for the first primary election of the 2022 midterms. There's a lot on the line as voters cast their ballots for both local and national races. Joining us now with a preview of what we can expect is NBC News senior political editor Mark Murray. Mark, good morning. Thanks for being with us. So, I mean, this is one of the first big opportunities to get this temperature check of voters for this year's midterms. What are some of the races we should be watching out for in Texas and some that maybe will have national implications?
Yeah, Savannah, the one at the very top of the list is Texas Governor Greg Abbott, a Republican, is facing a Republican primary challenge from his right. And the expectation is that that he will be able to exceed the 50% needed to avoid a runoff, but he is getting a challenge. There's even a more competitive race for Attorney General on the Republican side, where incumbent Ken Paxton, who has received an endorsement from former President Trump, is getting primaried from the likes of George P. Bush, that is Jeb Bush's son, as well as Louis Gohmert, a conservative Republican congressman from Texas. And then maybe my favorite race of all is a congressional Democratic primary in South Texas between incumbent Congressman Henry Cuellar versus progressive Jessica Cisneros, just to see how much if progressives are able to make gains in these primaries starting in Texas and across the country, Savannah.
Now, tell us about some of the issues that voters there are passionate about ahead of this primary. What are we going to see people telling us is the reason that they came out to the polls in Texas?
It really runs the gamut. And again, I think it's very consistent with what a lot of national polls are telling us. And so obviously the economy and inflation, certainly the situation with COVID. You know, all of a sudden, and I know we're talking about the situation in Ukraine, and that will be a focus on President Biden's State of the Union address. But it will be interesting to see how that kind of trickles into the midterm matrix.
Absolutely, especially with as much attention as there is on it. Now, Mark, we've been talking, of course, about the new restrictive election law in Texas. We're going to see that firsthand today, the differences that it's made. How much of an impact will it have on the primary? Tell us what types of things have been changed.
Yeah, it remains to be seen on this primary. There has been controversy because there were new requirements for mail-in ballots, that they actually had to have people's driver's license number to be able to match with your ballot. And that ended up resulting in a lot of early mail-in ballots getting rejected, but still with the ability to people to fix the ballots. It is worth noting that Texas has historically been a really poor mail-in ballot state, only allowing that for people who are senior citizens as well as disabled Texans. But we're going to be watching just to see how many people's ballots ended up getting affected and whether they were able to get fixed days earlier.
All right, Mark Murray, thank you so much.
This escalating crisis in Ukraine comes in the wake of a complicated and challenging first year in office for President Biden.
Yeah, COVID, inflation, political division. It's all put pressure on Americans across the country. And the president is preparing for tonight's State of the Union address on Capitol Hill. White House advisors say despite all these challenges, Biden's speech will be optimistic. NBC News chief White House correspondent Peter Alexander has more on the president's speech. Hey, Peter, good morning.
Hey, Joe and Savannah, good morning. Nice to see both of you. The president was, of course, initially eyeing this speech as a reset of sorts, an opportunity really to try to focus on his domestic priorities. But the Russian invasion clearly has forced him to drastically revise his speech. It's not going to be a wholesale overhaul of his planned address, we're told, but the president will emphasize his long-running theme of defending democracies against autocracy.
The State of the Union address is the biggest stage for any president, but tonight President Biden faces unique challenges both at home and abroad, juggling the war in Ukraine with the worries of Americans. And while the COVID situation is improving nationwide, Americans are struggling with record inflation and soaring gas prices. Still, senior advisors say the president will present an optimistic view of the country's future. President Biden recently detailing what he hopes his legacy will be.
I hope my legacy is that I was able to restore some decency and honor to the office. I was able to bring the middle class back to a place where they had real opportunity, given an even chance to succeed. And I was able to reconstruct our alliances, which had been frayed so badly internationally.
But Americans have been largely unimpressed with low approval ratings in his first year in office. A new poll showing only a third of Americans are satisfied with the president's handling of the Ukraine crisis. On Monday, President Biden trying to downplay the risk of a nuclear standoff after Vladimir Putin put his nuclear deterrence forces on high alert.
Mr. President, should Americans be worried about nuclear war?
No.
While the U.S. is leading a coalition of allies, ratcheting up stiff sanctions against Russia and delivering hundreds of millions of dollars in military and humanitarian aid to Ukraine, the White House has ruled out imposing a no-fly zone over parts of Ukraine. despite President Zelensky's urging the U.S. and NATO to do so.
Is there any way in which the U.S. would support a no-fly zone over Ukraine?
It would essentially mean the U.S. military would be shooting down planes, Russian planes. That is definitely escalatory. That is not something the president wants to do.
Lawmakers speaking out overnight after a classified briefing on the crisis.
It clearly appears to be a war to terrorize the population, and I think in many ways the worst is yet to come in that regard. Their clear focus at this point, if you just watch how they've positioned the troops, he's progressing towards laying siege, like a medieval siege of Kiev, at which point you're going to have a bunch of millions of starving people.
This is going to be a high-stakes balancing act for the president tonight. Some officials here have told me that they hope America's collective COVID haze is lifting with serious illness and cases dropping dramatically. And while most Americans do believe the worst of the pandemic is behind us, new polling shows that they are not giving President Biden credit for that improving situation. As we said, aides say he's also going to talk about the need to demonstrate American leadership before the world when democracy is under threat overseas and here at home. And he'll focus on his agenda, like bringing down the price of prescription drugs and other items, and what aspects and other aspects of the Build Back Better plan, even though it is no longer packaged together under that one umbrella as Build Back Better. Joan and Savannah.
All right, Peter Alexander at the White House for us. Thank you so much. Now, President Biden's State of the Union address will take on a drastically different tone in light of the unfolding crisis in Ukraine.
Here with more is Matthew Littman, a former speechwriter for then Senator Biden and current partner at Perceptual Advisors. Good to have you with us, Matthew. So we know presidents can strike different tones in their States of the Union addresses based on what the country is going through. With what's happening in Ukraine, what's the tone you think he needs to strike tonight? How much time can he devote to domestic issues, issues that affect Americans perhaps more directly?
Well, those are great questions. First of all, with the situation in the Ukraine, you have to be realistic about it. And then on the way that the nation is going, you could say, I feel your pain in a sense, like Bill Clinton used to say, but he does want to be optimistic about things like the economy and COVID. So one thing I saw in your poll that you just showed, that the country's not yet giving Biden credit for his leadership on Ukraine. I think that's going to change a lot, and it's going to change starting tonight. You know, we're in a great spot with Biden and Secretary of State Blinken and what they've been able to do to rally the world. And I think you're going to hear a lot about how they've rallied the world around the situation in Ukraine.
So, Matthew, you just kind of gave us a little hint at what we might see right now from this president in terms of kind of highlighting that, what his administration has done in light of this crisis. But can you help us kind of put some historical perspective around this? How has the message of a president in their State of the Union address changed during times of war? I mean, do you expect the president to deliver a wartime address tonight to the American people? What would that look like? And is that what's happened in the past?
Well, in the past, if you go back, for example, to FDR in 1941, he gave the Four Corners speech where he talked about the four freedoms that people should be able to expect around the world. I'm sure that in FDR's mind, we were not yet at war in World War II, but we were headed that way later that year. And so that speech ended up being very little about the American economy and almost all about the situation abroad. And that is a way of just rallying the country behind your leadership and your vision and telling people the tough truths about what may go on. And so that's what's going to happen tonight with Joe Biden. A few weeks ago, he was not planning, this president, to talk about Ukraine. And obviously that changes now. But at the same time, you have to balance that with the crisis of COVID, which is an ongoing crisis, and the economy. The economy has some very positive news and some negative news. The negative is obviously that inflation is super high. The positive is that people are quitting their jobs to get better jobs. That's an incredible situation. So you have to balance those things for the American people. The speech is long. It could be like an hour long. But you have to balance those things. You'll have plenty of time on each topic.
Matthew, as we mentioned, you're a former speechwriter to the president when he was a senator for Delaware. Every politician is different. What's his process like?
That's a good question. It's a little bit different with Joe Biden because Joe Biden's been doing this since the early 1970s. So as a speechwriter, it's impossible to know what Joe Biden knows, right? So I'll just give you an example. The very first speech I wrote for Joe Biden had a quote from Lincoln at the top, and then it's about 10 minutes of other stuff about labor unions. And his person calls me up afterward and says, great job on the speech. He used the quote that you gave him. He never uses quotes speechwriters give him. And I said, that's great. What about the rest of the speech? And he said he didn't use a word of the rest of the speech. And that was considered a great job. So It's different a little bit with Biden because he also has a lot of people who've been around him for a long time. And some of those people, for example, the current Secretary of State used to be a speechwriter for Joe Biden. There are a lot of people around him who've been doing this for a while. State of the Union is more difficult because it goes through dozens of people. I mean, if I were writing a speech for one of you, it would be me, you, and maybe your manager or your agent. This goes through dozens of people. It's a very difficult speech to write. And a lot of those people have been around Joe Biden for a very long time.
Wow, very interesting insight there from somebody who has done the job and lots to watch for tonight. Matthew Littman, thank you so much for your time.
Thank you.
Our continuing series, County to County, takes us now to Washoe County, Nevada, where people there plan to pay attention to the State of the Union speech. NBC News correspondent Guad Venegas joins us now from Reno, Nevada, with more on how they're feeling ahead of the address. Guad, good morning to you. So give us a lay of the land politically in Nevada, especially in the county you're in right now.
Joe, good morning. Well, Nevada is a state that was won by the Democrats. Biden won Nevada. And, of course, Republicans do have a strong presence, especially in the rural areas. Now, we're in Washoe County because this place is so diverse. When you look at voters in Nevada, you got to look at it. Clark County, that's where Las Vegas is, which is expected to vote blue. And then the rural areas, which are expected to vote red. Then you have Washoe County, one of the most diverse places in the country. A place where 1/3 of the voters are Democrats, 1/3 are Republican, and the other third are nonpartisan. You have so many undecided voters that this county could swing the election one way or the other. So both Democrats and Republicans know they have to win these voters over in the next midterm election, Joe.
So, Guad, how are people feeling ahead of the speech? Is the Ukraine crisis top of mind for them right now?
So we've been speaking to a lot of these undecided voters. You know, a month ago, people would talk about other domestic issues. But of course, now, as soon as you bring up the Biden administration, they say they want to find a solution to the Ukraine crisis. They want to see the Biden administration get involved and help find a solution. But they also keep bringing up other issues that they say have been affecting Americans since the Biden administration took over. Let's hear from one of these voters.
I am not particularly happy with what's going on domestically. What I would like to hear tomorrow is, of course, we're all very concerned about Ukraine. However, that cannot lead us to become distracted from our problems at home. I'm not happy about the way the administration has handled basically the energy crisis, the economy, washing the economy with unnecessary, in my opinion, levels of money that has pushed inflation up.
So voters here expecting more from the current administration. Now, what's interesting is when you speak to voters here, they will talk about issues. They will talk about the things that they aren't happy with, but they don't really mention political parties. They don't really care about the political party as much as they do care about the issues.
Guad, real quickly, any other domestic issues people there are concerned about?
Well, just like in other parts of the country, housing continues to be at the top of people's minds here. The governor just announced they're investing an additional $500 million to create more affordable housing. So you ask people about what worries them, and it's the cost of housing. Places like Reno here in Washoe County, where the medium house will cost more than $500,000, you know, and we have a lot of people that are homeless, people that just can't afford a place to live. And then, of course, everything that has to do with the economy. People here feel like the cost of living is too much. Things are just getting too expensive and very unhappy with the inflation. So they like to see the president do more. Let's hear from another voter talking about other issues that matter to them here.
Be more done. I think there should be, you know, there's like a lot of promises that were promised and that have not been fulfilled yet. Student loans have not been forgiven. That was something he raced on, you know, like he ran on that. You know, climate change is still an issue.
I'm really hoping that Biden can, you know, help the nation come together and kind of find a sense of unity between everybody.
So they speak about unity. We heard from Brena just now. She was standing next to her best friend at the end of the interview. They said, you know, in the next election, she might vote Republican, I might vote Democrat, and it doesn't matter because what we care about is the issues. So there is a strong sense of a lack of unity in the country by the voters here in Washoe who tell us that they're still undecided, Joe.
compared with some people who are very passionate about who they're voting for and which party they align with. All right, Guad, thanks so much for that report. Appreciate it. And just a reminder, you can watch the State of the Union right here on NBC News Now. Our live coverage kicks off tonight at 8 p.m. Eastern, 5 Pacific time. The speech will get underway just after 9 o'clock.
Let's now get a check on your morning News Now weather.
Bill Cairns is back with us. Bill, good morning.
Good morning. March is I don't know, it's a temperamental month. Like, you're hot and it's cold, it's stormy, and then it's nice. And yeah, we usually get a lot of wild swings in March.
You mean like a lamb or a lion?
Sometimes that works, but this year we're kind of like lamb, and then who knows what we're going to end up. Maybe we're going to reverse it this month. I don't know. So let me get into explain kind of the northern half of the country. You just don't really get excited about the beginning of March. I mean, the wind chill right now is -15 in Caribou, Maine. It's 0 in areas of the northern Great Lakes. International Falls is -1. So the northern half of the U.S., it's not a very warm start to March. It was a frigid yesterday. We got a little bit of snow that's going to develop through northern New England during the day today. And then we have another batch that's going to go through the Great Lakes tomorrow and then into New England as we go through Wednesday night. So we're not done with the snow. It doesn't look like a big ordeal, but Buffalo 1 to 2 inches. Areas in Maine will get about 1 to 3 inches. And this is in complete contrast with everyone that's excited about spring. In the middle of the country, throughout the plains, the Midwest, throughout the South, everyone's like, this is fantastic. Let me see what my golf clubs look like, my tennis racket. 75 today in Kansas City, 66 in Atlanta, even Richmond's at 64. Tomorrow we do it all over again. 64 in Cincinnati. Tennessee is gorgeous. Dallas, 75 degrees. Denver, 71. I mean, this is the fantastic stuff that everyone in northern New England and the northern Great Lakes gets extremely jealous of this time of year, because look at New York. We're stuck around 40 degrees right through the weekend, where our friends in Richmond are much warmer. But I'm not bitter. We just have to wait till April.
No.
It's fine.
Yeah, never bitter. All right, never bitter Bill. That's what
no
we're calling
complaints.
Right.
Yeah,
Never.
Yeah. You're so mild, Bill. So mild. All right, thanks, Bill.
At home and around the world, people from all walks of life are showing their support to Ukraine and its people.
NBC News correspondent Jacob Soboroff has more on this global response.
Hey there, about 1 million people in the United States have ties to Ukraine, and both here and around the world, folks are coming together to help those under attack in ways both big and small.
From Istanbul to Detroit and Chicago, millions, young and old, speaking with one voice, saying, we stand with Ukraine.
All my thoughts and all my mind in Ukraine right now.
The U.S. home to more than 1 million Ukrainians. For many, their only option to rally others in protest.
They want to hear the Ukrainian voices. They need to hear your voice. They need to hear our family's voice.
At the White House, the First Lady wearing a mask with a sunflower, Ukraine's national flower. And in Salt Lake City, a massive rally outside the state capitol. Several states also calling to end the sale of Russian alcohol. Maryland's governor wants to sever all financial ties.
We're not doing anything to support Russia in any way or their economy.
In New Jersey, a prayer vigil.
We pray for peace. We pray for the souls of those who have been lost.
Overseas, protests in major cities around the world. More than 100,000 marching in Berlin, 80,000 in Prague, and tens of thousands in Rome. Israelis outside the Parliament building in Jerusalem calling on their government to take stronger action against Russia.
It's not just an attack against Ukraine, it is an attack on the whole free world.
The sports world leading the way in an all-out boycott. FIFA now banning Russia's national and club soccer teams from international competition after teams from Poland, Sweden, and the Czech Republic refused to take the pitch against Russia in the upcoming World Cup playoffs. Fans doing their part, too, showing support for Ukrainian-born players. Striker Roman Yaremchuk moved to tears when supporters in Portugal showered him with a standing ovation and waving signs saying, "We are with you."
At the request of Ukrainian officials over the weekend, people from around the world have donated tens of millions of dollars in cryptocurrency to the government and to NGOs there. It's just another way the world's coming together to support Ukraine.
As the Ukraine crisis unfolds, big businesses are responding by cutting ties with Russia or sending help to Ukraine.
Yeah, Bertha Coombs joins us now with the latest on that. Hey, Bertha.
Hey, Joan, Savannah. A shipment of Starlink satellite internet terminals from SpaceX has arrived in Ukraine. The country's vice president sharing a photo of one of the antennas on social media. Elon Musk, who is the CEO of SpaceX, announced over the weekend that the company had activated Starlink internet service in Ukraine. Broadband service there has been disrupted since Russia launched its invasion last week. Visa and MasterCard are blocking several Russian financial institutions from their payment networks, complying with Western sanctions imposed on Moscow. The sanctions require the companies to suspend access for entities listed as specially designated nationals, such as Russia's central bank and its second largest vendor, VTB. Visa and MasterCard are also pledging to donate $2 million each for humanitarian aid. And here in the U.S., some bars and liquor stores are pulling Russian vodka off of their shelves and promoting Ukrainian brands instead. One bar owner in Michigan has rid his stockroom of the old Soviet brand Stolichnaya, replacing with Ukraine's Vector. Stoli is owned by a Russian-born tycoon, but it's actually made in Latvia. So on its website, Stoli says it stands for peace in Europe and solidarity with the Ukrainian people. Very complicated situation there at Stoli.
Yeah, we're seeing a few situations like that. All right,
Yeah,
Bertha,
absolutely.
thank you so much. Appreciate it.
Thanks, Bertha. Now, the CDC says indoor masks are no longer necessary across most of the U.S., and now some states are looking to ease mask requirements in schools, while new research shows that Pfizer's vaccine may offer little protection from infection to in children ages 5 to 11. Joining us now with everything you need to know is Dr. Uche Blackstock. She's an MSNBC contributor. Doctor, good to have you with us. So let's start with this vaccine for kids, this research from New York State Department of Health, that this Pfizer vaccine didn't do all that much for kids. What did it find? What should parents be thinking about as mask mandates are dropped?
Great, Savannah. Thank you so much for having me. So the biggest take home is that, the vaccine was not as effective at preventing infections in children 5 to 11-year-old. It was also less effective at preventing hospitalizations in this age group. And there was a big difference compared to the 12 to 17 group. And we think that is because it is dose related. The dose that 5 to 11-year-olds get is about a third the dose of 12 to 17-year-olds. So we will have to see, Pfizer's continuing to study a third dose of the vaccine to see if maybe that will be more effective than the 2 vaccine dose in 5 to 11-year-olds.
Let's talk about some other New York news. New York City Mayor Eric Adams announced they're ending the indoor vaccine requirement for businesses and dining beginning on March 7th. We've gotten very used to here having to show that to go into restaurants. If COVID-19 cases numbers continue to trend down, we'll no longer have to do that. Adams also said mask mandates will be lifted in public schools. What do you think of this decision? And then especially on the school part, considering that this new research about Pfizer's vaccine, kids being in school without masks on?
Right. Well, 2 things. I think lifting both mask and vaccine requirements for businesses at the same time is a bit too aggressive. I would be more cautious of that, either one or the other. And then 2, I think that given this news that we have about the Pfizer vaccine being less effective in 5 to 11-year-olds, we need to, again, be cautious about lifting masks in schools. We know that a multi-layered strategy is key to preventing the spread of the virus within schools, and masks are part of that strategy. So lifting it now when we know that vaccines are not as effective, I don't think is a wise decision.
Doctor, I want to ask you a viewer question. It's about children's vaccines, and I think it's a really good one, especially considering right now we have this research that it's less effective in 5 to 11-year-olds. This is from the parent of a 7-year-old asking, can you please explain why there's only one approved vaccine for kids? When can we expect a second option?
Right. And so there are several different reasons why, but one is we have to make sure the vaccines are effective in adults first, and then there is a de-escalation in terms of age. So the youngest children will be the last, but also there needs to be an adequate safety and efficacy study done on these medications. We need to make sure that they are safe to use in children. We know that Pfizer will hopefully have some more data on the 3-dose vaccine series in March, and then we should also have some data from Moderna as well. So there is a regulatory process that has to be followed We cannot undermine that because we know what happens when we undermine that regulatory process. Public trust is undermined. So unfortunately, we have to follow the process, and hopefully we'll have a vaccine that is both safe and effective for young children.
All right, Dr. Blackstock, always great to have you. Thank you so much. And if you have a question for one of our doctors, let us know. Email us at morningnewsnow@NBCUNI.com with your questions, and let us know if you'd like to stay anonymous.
It's official. Mardi Gras is back.
1 year after the pandemic forced New Orleans to all but cancel its famous carnival, the parades are rolling and the beads are flying again. NBC News correspondent Morgan Chesky joins us now from New Orleans. Hey, Morgan, good morning.
Savannah, Joe, good morning. Nothing quite like the magic of a Mardi Gras morning here in the Big Easy. And what better way to celebrate it than walking alongside the big stars today? And that is the floats, guys. They didn't have a chance to hit the streets last year. And just take a look at some of the craftsmanship they have. We're walking alongside the Rex organization's floats this year. They're celebrating 150 years. How about this one right here, guys? A streetcar named Desire. Always exciting, always fun to bring back Mardi Gras, albeit this year with a slightly cautious tone.
Call it the sound of New Orleans or the soul of the city. Either way, that Mardi Gras magic is back.
Let the good times roll.
1 year after the pandemic canceled the biggest party in town, the city's planned a cautious return.
As exciting as it is to see this, do you still have concerns?
Yeah, of course. We are still in the middle of a global pandemic, and we don't take that lightly. It was not an option to repeat the tragedies of what happened 2 years ago.
The city's health director, Dr. Jennifer Avegno, remembers Mardi Gras 2020 as one of the nation's first COVID super spreader events. This year, she says tens of thousands of free COVID tests are being handed out, just like beads. And masks required indoors, including bars and restaurants. Proof of vaccination also required to enter certain areas.
We know what we lost in 2020, and then we know what it felt like last year to not have this.
The parades changing too. Police and city staffing shortages forcing officials to streamline routes. Tourism has yet to return to pre-pandemic levels when 1 million people poured in for Mardi Gras. But for those who made it here, the legendary Carnival crews are ready to give everyone the show they've been waiting for.
We're excited. This community needed it. The nation needed it.
We caught up with the crew of Argus, prepping floats.
Get ready, bring your bag, because you're going to catch a lot.
One honoring healthcare workers. Another paying homage to the city's signature sweet treat, the beignet. All of them part of a beloved tradition, now finally back on track.
It feels great. It feels like we're getting a fresh start. It feels like the city's coming back alive, and it just feels like home.
Morgan, I understand you're with some of those famous float crews now.
Yeah, Joe, they've actually rolled out all of their floats onto the street here ahead of the big parade today. And I just want to give you a little close-up here. They have spent the past year putting these floats together, and you just get a sense of the craftsmanship and attention that goes into every single one of these floats. They're going to go out there, be welcomed by hundreds of thousands of people here in New Orleans. Then they're going to roll back in, be taken down, and they start all over again for next year's Mardi Gras. Everyone telling me they're just glad to have this back. This truly is part of the soul of this city, and it's going to be a pretty big day today. We'll send it back to you.
Oh,
they've earned it, too.
Yeah, exactly. Great to see. City's back.
Thank you, Morgan.
Thank you.
Thanks for watching our YouTube channel. Follow today's top stories and breaking news by downloading the NBC News app.